What up? It's your boy, Incredible Man. Yes, I'm back at it again, and this is Vinland Saga episode 20, and this is my discussion slash review, and it was another bomb episode. Okay, now you guys know how I felt about last week's, but this one didn't do exactly the same thing because, you know, there was a lot of other stuff going on in that episode, and I told you guys last week that it was just GOAT status. But this week gave me that same feeling, but in a different way, man. This episode was so different to last week's episode, but it was just as intense if you get what I'm saying and kind of catch my drift, because there wasn't any action or anything to it. Just was a lot of tension, a lot of building, and a lot of story progression as a whole story. But everything, it made me feel like the exact same way as last week, because it just didn't have to do anything. Just the dialogue, the score that was playing, especially when they were inside the hall talking to Knut's father, the king. All of that was just pure epicness, man. So let's dive right into this episode, man. Dude, okay, so this week we start off and we see Floki. It was nice to see Floki again because we haven't seen dude in a minute. And I'm hoping now that we kind of get introduced to him again and we're kind of wrapped up in Johannesburg, I think, or Yumsburg, or whatever, anywhere, whatever kind of burg we're at, and we're there and we see him and the king, that it really comes out that he's the one that hired ASKELADD to kill Thor's, and I hope Thorfinn finds out. I really do. Or Thorkel. Either one of them. I just hope they find out soon now that we're there and we're seeing Floki and everything else. I hope that kind of pans out that way, because I want him dead. I'm just being real. So we see Floki, and he's speculating that that the prince should be dead. That there's no way that Knut is traveling with Thorkel and their companions. There's no way. And we also learned that Knut sent a scout ahead to tell him, but he didn't want to believe it, and he had his men on the ready to attack Thorkel's men whenever they came. And surprise, and the look on his face was just phenomenal. Surprise, surprise, we see that it is Knut because we knew that, but they didn't. But also at the same time, that tells me that he either eavesdropped or he was in on the plan because, you know, the king trusts him in on the plan to let all of that war and fight take place and have Thorkel kill Knut on the battlefield. But it didn't work that way because Knut now has a new whole outlook on life. And then he tells Floki, you know, tell the king that I'll see him after I had time to rest and everything, and later in the hall. And he's like, make sure this message is delivered accurately. So it was bomb. But dude, this is when the whole story started to make a turn and take a turn for me. Excuse me. Because at the same time we have now we have Knut walking through the village and everything, and he's telling Thorkel, you know, you abandoned these guys once before. You were a Viking here, so talk to these guys and just have a wonderful time and drink with these guys and everything, and try to see if we can sway any of these people to our side. And Thorkel was like, okay, sure, I'm drinking, it's your tab. Okay, that's all I needed to know. So they went to do that. Now, at this time, we see Knut talking to ASKELADD and Thorfinn, and he's asking ASKELADD about his father and like how would ASKELADD have him killed. And then ASKELADD comes up with a brilliant plan, which is have someone kill him or assassinate him and then hide that person so no one really knows who it was, and they can just rest and be off in the distance, and then that you can bring them back whenever you need to, and after all of the dust settles, which is a good plan, but the king is smart, so I don't see that plan actually working unless it's someone like ASKELADD or Thorfinn into that kind of aspect. That's what I felt. But then we have Knut really breaking down everything about how he feels about faith and religion this episode, and I'm going to briefly touch on it. You guys know I don't try to really dive straight into that on my channel, but I feel like what he's stating and what he's mentioning is true facts. I mean, because a lot of people have that same conclusion or reach that same conclusion, but something bad happens in their life if they were a churchgoer or believer. And me myself, I believe that, you know, with that faith and everything, that no matter the circumstance, that's what faith is. Regardless of the turmoil or the happy times, that faith is what it stays you throughout the whole thing. No matter whether you're one moment you're high and happy and like not high, but happy and living off life and everything is going your way and everything is perfect, or when you're in your lows and everything and everyone is coming at you from all sides and all angles. That's where your faith sustains you and it pushes you forward and through. But that's just me. That may not be for everybody when such a traumatic event or something terrible happens to them and they come into this different realization and they kind of grasp at anything other than what they had prior, because that didn't help them in the situation that they were having. And that's a lot of things, but that's you. That's different people and how people have a different outlook on life. But I could understand where he was coming from and I understood what he was saying, but that's just not for me. But, it is what it is. So then we get further in the episode and dude, this is when it got so good, man. When they got into the hall and they went and talked to the king and he was like, step in. And the moment they stepped in, it's like when they stepped in and felt all the tension in the hall, I felt all the tension in the hall. That was the most wonderful thing. And that's what I love about Vinland Saga. How can they make me... This is an anime. Now, I know that they can make you feel the sadness and the excitement and the anger and the joy and every other emotion that you could possibly be feeling and all this stuff. But tension, they made... Even suspense. I could feel suspense. I don't know what's going to happen around this corner. But tension. They made me feel the tension in this episode. I tensed up when they walked into the thing, and then ASKELADD and Knut asked Thorfinn, was like, Thorfinn, what do you see? He was like, there's a lot of you. There's about 20. Then there's some up top too. I was like, okay, Thorfinn, I see you over here spotting out everything. So it was nice for them to mention that. So then they walked further in and ASKELADD was just running through so many intervals and everything in his mind. And that's why I love ASKELADD, man, because no one else would have thought of that stuff. They're walking in and it's dark in there and ASKELADD was like, my eyes are adjusting to the darkness. Okay, just a few more paces, and then I'll be able to see the king's face. And he was like, I was like, okay, yeah, okay. And then next thing you know, the king said, stop right there. Stop. And then we go into this whole thing where ASKELADD was like, oh, he looks tired. And then looking at the king looks miserable. I don't know, maybe it's just the stress of being king and all of the weight that he has from the crown, because he mentioned a lot of stuff that the will of the crown to Knut. But I don't know if it's the will of the crown, stress, or just like, bad living habits with the wine and the meat and the sex and then not being clean. And so there's a lot of things that could lead to him looking just horrible. But dude looks so bad. Dude looks so bad. Knut, you want to be king? I hope you don't turn out looking like this. But then we go into this whole thing and this whole spiel about Knut mentioning what he wants. And I love it. I love it so much. If you started watching Vinland Saga, like if you skipped everything and then jumped in right at this episode, you would think that this was Knut's trait the whole show. Because he's playing like this Knut is so perfect, like with his whole new demeanor and everything, that you wouldn't suspect that he had the other wimpy side at all. And he's playing it to perfection, man. Give the voice actor credit for that. So then we have him and his father going into this whole thing, and his father pretty much, he didn't come out and say it, but he was pretty leaning towards it, like where he led to like, yeah, I kind of want you killed. He didn't mention it or say anything, but he kind of led towards it. And then we have Knut. He didn't come out and say anything, but he's kind of just playing along with his father about him wanting this throne. And dude, it was so boss, their whole back and forth. And then ASKELADD steps up because then he sent like all of the soldiers he had hidden ready to attack them. And then ASKELADD steps up with wonderful moment and comes in and was like, Your Highness. And he laid out this whole spiel and plan and everything was like, well, Knut done all this and he pulled Thorkel right under your wing to have you take over London and everything. So it was so good for him to do that, man. It was boss. It was so boss. Now I'm hoping that we understand, that we see that what Thorkel and Knut and everyone is planning, is going to happen with the king, because we now know that the king is the wise king. He's planning a whole bunch of stuff too. But the thing is, one moment that stood out to me was this whole episode, and it stood out to Thorfinn as well. When ASKELADD was talking to the king, and he was mentioning everything, and he was like, "Oh, well, what name did your father give you?" And he was like, "Well, my father didn't give me a name. I got this name. I'm just ASKELADD." And he's like, "Oh, must have been one of your father's whores or mistresses." And when ASKELADD has superpowers. When that happened, we saw like ASKELADD have this whole moment where like we saw every vein in his hand, like smoke coming out of him. ASKELADD went Ultra Instinct. If I'm being 100%, ASKELADD went Ultra Instinct, and Thorfinn was like, "I've never seen ASKELADD this mad, dude." But then he calmed himself and let the king walk out, and he kind of calmed down at the end. So then we jump at the end, and we have everyone in the little pub like thing, kind of resting and trying to just relaxing after the long journey. And we get introduced to Ragnar's brother, Gunnar. If Gruner, however you want to say it, Gunnar, I think. And he's somewhat like Ragnar, but not exactly. But then the whole little pub scene was nice and everything. And after meeting him, I'm kind of feeling like ASKELADD does. Like, he's not as loyal as Ragnar is, and I feel like he has something up his sleeve. So then we jump outside and we see everything going on, and we see ASKELADD and Thorfinn having a discussion because Thorfinn is training. And then we bump into Alti, and he's talking to ASKELADD and telling him he's sorry for betraying him and everything, but he's going to leave because his brother's mind is gone, and he was never really a violent person anyway, so he's just going to leave. And that's what I'm saying, man. Everything that happened in this episode was wonderful, and then we get to the end, and we just get pure greatness, because at the end, ASKELADD tells him, he forgave him, and he was like, "Well, I know that this isn't you, so when you leave," and he gave him gold for one, but he said it only on one condition. "When you leave, don't pick up another sword. Go be a farmer, have a wife, have a kid, do all that stuff, because if I ever see you on the battlefield again, whether you're on my side or not, I will kill you." But for ASKELADD to forgive him, give him gold, and let him go in hopes that he has a happy, long life after this, that man is wonderful. Dude, every time another character steps up, even like someone like Knut, and you see them stepping up and making progress, you be like, "Yeah, they're so cool, they're so nice." The writers and the creator always find a way to bring it back around to ASKELADD. And dude, it's just wonderful, man. And ASKELADD has superpowers. This is your boy, Dick Incredible, man. Don't forget to smash that like button so you can't smash it anymore. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them. And subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. And remember that anime matters, anime is greatness, and anime is life, man. Peace out.